Hey, how's it going? What's your name? Where are you from?
Hi, my name is Chad, and I'm from the U.S.
Today, Chad, I have a bit of a philosophical question for you.
Okay.
Do you think people are happier now, or do you think they were happier in the past?
I feel like that's a very multi-layered topic. I would say yes. I think people are happier now than they were in the past. But it sometimes seems like people aren't as happy as they were in the past. A lot of information sharing has sort of distorted perceptions of happiness. We become aware of all these terrible things that are happening around us, and it makes people less happy. But at the same time, I also believe that compared to decades ago, standards of living, standards of health have gone up so dramatically that on the whole, people are happier, but they may not feel that way. For the individual person, it's different for everybody, right? If they're happy or if they're not happy. But I think on average, I think people are happier than they were in the 50s or, decades ago. We might also be able to say that people were happier in the past because they were so blissfully unaware of all the terrible things that were happening. But at the same time, there's maybe more oppression and more terrible things happening that directly affected people's lives versus indirectly, as we sort of see now.
For me, I could find reasons for both. People were happier in the past. I could think of reasons for that. People are happier now. I could think of reasons for that. For people were happier in the past, it's like, well, we used to be much more communal. We would live in small cities, small towns. Everybody knew each other. You would know your neighbor. You would say hi to your neighbor. And I think there's a lot of value in that.
Sure.
And that's really good for kids. It's good for people who are living alone. They're lonely. Nowadays, we don't really have that as much. I don't know any of my neighbors. I don't know any of my neighbors in my previous place. I didn't know any of my neighbors in the place before that. I never see my landlord. So all the people in my life are people that, I've known now for years. And it's hard to make new friends. So that's kind of a harder thing about living today. Another thing that would make me think, okay, people were happier in the past is I think smartphones don't make you happier. I think, the scrolling on TikTok, on YouTube, on Instagram is not good for your psychology. There's a lot of junk food now. People can get away with a lot lazier lifestyles and become more unhealthy. I think people were more connected to nature in the past. They would go outside, go on walks, spend more time outside. There was less pollution in the past. The food was healthier. It was more nutritionally dense. I think an apple now is a lot more watered down than an apple 100 years ago. Less chemicals for sure. Less stuff in the air. So these are all, I guess, reasons to why you might argue that people were happier in the past. However, on the flip side, I think people are living much longer today. Our understanding of health and mental health is much better today. Disease is much less rampant today. Poverty is much less deadly today. Even the poor people today, many of them have smartphones. They have access to clean water, to toilets, to sanitary, products, to healthcare. There were a lot of deadly things in the past that we don't have to deal with, namely disease, crime, this kind of stuff. I think the ability to go from poor to middle class to wealthy is a lot easier now than it was 200 years ago. In the past, 100, 200, 300 years ago, and of course before that, if you were born poor, that is your status.
Stay poor, yeah.
You're in that medieval town, you're in that village, you're in that city, you're hanging out with other people who are in your status, and for you to get out of that group, to think that you can get out of that group, people are going to chastise you. Who do you think you are? You know your place. You know your last name. You know where you belong, right? But now it's like you can be born poor and become rich, and then other rich people will accept you. Wow, you worked so hard. So I think in that regard, I'd rather be alive today. I guess all in all, my mind goes to people are probably happier today. But again, I would agree with you. Case by case is a big thing.
Yeah.
You could find some very unhappy people today. But as a whole, I think the amount of misery would probably be greater in the past.
I agree. Yeah, I think one thing that you mentioned, the social hierarchy, I think was a lot more rigid.
Absolutely.
Way more rigid in the past, where if you were poor, you're going to stay poor. If you were rich, you were likely going to stay rich unless you blew all your money somehow.
Gambling or something.
Right, exactly, yeah. Whereas now you can climb the social ladder, you can climb the financial ladder, I think a lot more accessibly now than you could in the past. There are, of course, as you mentioned, there's, still people really having a tough time. We can't just generalize and say, oh, it's easy for everybody now. No, of course not. But compared to the past, I think there's a lot more opportunities to sort of climb the social ladder than there were in the past. And I think that's something where people can be happy. Maybe they aren't happy, but they can sort of move in a direction where they can be happy, which leads to just an overall lift in like average happiness, if that makes sense.
I got a question for you.
Okay.
Would you rather be rich 500 years ago or poor 500 years in the future?
Oh, man. I think I would rather be poor 500 years in the future.
Wow.
Based on what we've been saying in this conversation, right? Even if you're poor now, you'd probably be happier now being poor than you would be being poor 500 years ago. Because if you're poor 500 years ago, probably going to die relatively soon, right? 1500s, like... probably not looking so good for you, but now it's like even if you're poor, there's social programs that can sort of help you. There's all these different resources that you would still have access to, like you mentioned, like clean water. These things are still available now, even if you're poor. And so I can only imagine what that would sort of translate to, what that would be sort of extrapolated to 500 years from now. What is the standard of living for somebody who's poor 500 years from now? Does everybody have like an implant in their head of all these electronic things that they can just do with this chip? Does everybody have a smartphone? Does everybody have a car? Like all these things, we don't know. We can never know. But I feel like the standard of living, even for somebody who's poor, would be greater than the standard of living for somebody who's poor now. And so
Absolutely.
I think I would rather be poor 500 years in the future than rich 500 years ago.
Unless there's World War III.
Oh, no.
And we are just reset. The Great Reset.
Oh, no.
Going back to living in caves, hunting with spears, and building fires.
I mean, at that point, it's like, how do we even define poor at that point? Sounds like everybody's poor at that point. You're just sort of fending for yourself back to hunter-gatherer society.
I guess the big thing that we're unsure of is society going to continue to improve and get better, or is something going to happen? Are we going to blow ourselves up?
Sure.
Or is there going to be some crazy disease or zombie virus, or are aliens going to come and take us over? Whatever tragedy, fill in the blank.
I mean, I feel like that would sort of affect overall happiness just across the spectrum.
Absolutely.
Right? Everybody would be more miserable.
Maybe there will be no rich and poor in the future. Maybe everybody's just going to have a robot helper that can do everything for them. And we just have so much abundance because we're just so productive and we don't need anybody to do any difficult jobs. Are you happier now at your age than you've ever been?
I think so, yeah.
You're not a super young man anymore.
That's true. But yeah, there were certain periods in the past where I may have been happier than I was now, but they were relatively like short term, right? So maybe I was happier when I was like in college as an undergrad because it was studying, but also like lots of partying, lots of hanging out with friends. It was a lighter time in my life. And so I might have been happier then. But at the same time, am I happy because I'm financially stable? Am I happy because I have a good group of friends that I hang out with, a good social circle? And I think when I break it down by like those different factors, I think on the whole, I would be happier now because when I was in college, right? Financial stability? No, not at all. Poor college student, right? But got to do a lot of like social happiness, hanging out with friends.
Active life.
Parties, yeah, exactly. But now it's kind of like, well, I still have an active social life. I hang out with my friends, but I'm also far more financially stable than I was 15 years ago. And so I think that that's a very important thing to consider is that, you might have felt like you were happier back then, but not in every aspect or in ways that maybe were a bit of an illusion.
I think it's important to point out is that a lot of times when we think about the past, whether it's history or our own personal past, we only look at the good things.
Right.
And you forget how, hard a problem was, how much it was difficult to live in this circumstance, how much it would have sucked to not have internet, for the people in the past, or to have health, the proper medical care, or like we keep saying, like clean water.
Right.
Or for ourselves, like how lonely we could have been at times. We were single, or how financially not stable we were.
Right.
I'm happier now, more stable,
Right.
less roller coastery.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it. It's less ups and downs, but it's more about like a smoother, stable happiness.
Yeah. All right. I think that's a good place to end it. I hope you're all happy watching this. All right, guys. I will see you in the next video. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, how's it going? What's your name? Where are you from?
So my name is Chad, and I'm from the U.S.
Today, Chad, I want to talk with you about ghosts and aliens.
Ooh, interesting. Okay.
Let's start with ghosts. Do you believe in ghosts?
It's such a hard question because I can't definitively say, oh, they don't exist, so of course not. But
Can't say they don't exist.
I can't say they don't exist, so I guess that means I do believe that they exist.
Yeah, but you can also say that about, I can't prove that the invisible spaghetti monster doesn't exist because he's invisible.
It's true. I haven't seen evidence to completely disprove their existence, whereas there are so many people who have stories or photos or video of all these like supernatural events happening, right? And so I guess I sort of lean that way because the people who have any sort of like proof is on the side that says, yes, they exist. And so I guess I would sort of be slightly on that side, but not like completely, not like, yes, they exist for sure. Like definitely not that strong.
So you think that if a lot of people believe something or they've had an experience or believe that they've had an experience, that this does hold weight in terms of evidence that they might exist?
I think it needs to go a little bit further than just people saying that they've had this experience or that this thing exists just purely based on faith, because at that point it just becomes faith. It just becomes sort of like religion, which is neither good nor bad. But for something like ghosts or you know, supernatural beings or things like this, the people who say that they exist tend to point to more physical evidence. And when I say physical evidence, I mean like, oh, they have photos or they have video evidence of these, you know, weird things happening. And so I think it's that sort of added physical evidence that puts me on that side, rather than just saying, well, I was possessed by this ghost and so they obviously exist. I don't lend as much, you know, credit to that.
Have you ever had any ghostly experiences?
I have not. And so this is sort of why I'm so torn, you know. Maybe if I had had my own supernatural experience, I would be much more like, yes, they exist for sure, right? But I haven't had my own experience. Never
Any time when you were like, wow, there's just a weird vibe, there's a weird sound, there's an object that has, you know, changed location from the last time I've seen it, anything like that?
I mean, unless I've sort of like created a mental block because I was just so disturbed by it. No, I can't recall any event or any experience of my own.
Do you believe that locations, houses, places, parks can have bad energy?
Bad energy, or
Yeah.
can be like haunted, or
Yeah, either.
either. Okay, I mean, bad energy, sure. Yeah, I think
Physical places can hold a negative energy.
yeah, I mean, I think you hear a lot about when, you know, scenes of a murder or, you know, places where just these bad things happen, you can sort of feel a bad energy in the air from that thing happening. And like, even if you don't believe in supernatural beings like ghosts or whatever, you can still sort of feel this disturbing feeling in the air that something bad has happened. And so I think that is a little bit different. So like bad energy versus, you know, ghosts, you know, we talk about old houses or, you know, these places that are, you know, haunted. That's a little bit different because maybe something bad happened there. Maybe, you know, a murder or something bad happened there. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way in order for it to be haunted, I would say. And so I think it's a little bit different. Those haunted places, those places where, you know, people tend to see ghosts or whatever, those are the places where you tend to see that video, photo evidence. And so those are the places where I'm kind of like, okay, like I believe that these places can have bad energy, that these places could be haunted, you know, if, you know, supernatural beings exist.
I think the real test of places with dark energy or negative energy is like, if you can go there, not know the history, not know the background, and still feel negative energy without knowing why, maybe those kind of places like really exist.
I agree with that, because if you already know going in that something bad has happened there, you sort sort of have this like internal bias.
Yeah, you do.
Right? You go in thinking something bad happened here. I already don't feel good about this place. And so it sort of like amplifies what may or may not actually be there.
If I were to give you $1,000 and say, Chad, go sleep in this extremely haunted house in the middle of the forest, there's no other places around it, go sleep in this house for a week, would you do it?
No.
No.
No. For $1,000, no.
$5,000.
I don't know. A week is a long time, man. If you were like, oh, one night, hell yeah, right? $1,000 still might be a little bit low, but like $5,000 for one night, hell yeah. But a week, I think it would have to go up quite a bit. But I don't know what my
Why does the price have to go up?
It has to be worth it.
Why isn't it worth it?
I mean, a week is a long time. That'd be a week away from doing other things, right?
You could do work. You could bring your laptop.
Wait, this haunted cabin in the woods that's super haunted has Wi-Fi.
Has Wi-Fi.
Wow, they really upgraded their haunted cabins, huh? I think it would still just be like a tough decision. I think I'd have to be like presented with the choice in real life, not in a hypothetical, to really like sort of weigh it and actually consider if I would do it or
Can
not.
I change the scenario?
Sure.
Okay, you don't have to move. You don't have to go anywhere. You can stay in your house, but I'm going to bring you an extremely haunted urn.
I think I might be okay with that.
Or like a doll or something.
Doll I would be a little bit less okay with. I think dolls would like creep me out, man. But like haunted urn or something, I think I could do that.
Haunted urn.
Yeah, I don't know why it was a haunted urn, but yeah, I feel like I'd be okay with that one. I'm not sure why. I think it's just the familiarity of like my own home, and then there's this haunted item there. I think I would be just more comfortable versus just a completely unknown new place that's supposedly haunted, even if I'm able to do work there.
Now, how about aliens? Do you believe aliens exist?
So aliens are something that I do believe exists.
Okay.
I just think that, the universe is so expansive. It's so big. The chances that Earth is the only place in the entire universe that life exists, I just can't wrap my head around that. And so, when we think about aliens, I don't think of like the green dudes with black eyes. I don't necessarily think of aliens like that, but I think of it more of the idea of life that is not originally of Earth.
Sure. Maybe it's as simple as just saying if we can find water on other planets, then it's very likely we can find life.
They do often say that, right? That you need water in order for life to develop, for it to happen. I believe there are many other planets that do have water.
That's what I think too. Yeah, that's what I've heard as well.
And that's what I'm saying. So it's like, we have all these other planets that have water. Not one of them has any sort of life. It just seems just very
unlikely.
Unlikely. Yeah.
What's scarier, ghosts or aliens?
I think supernatural. I think ghosts would be scarier because they're already here. If aliens exist, we've been observing the universe for decades. There's been no known contact, and the distance between planets, galaxies, etc., is so large that it would take such a long time to even get to Earth. And so it's not something that I feel like an immediate threat or danger or
fear, yeah.
Versus if ghosts are here, they're here. It's already here. It's on this planet. It's right down the street. It's here. Versus aliens, where it's like it's so distant. It's not at the forefront of my mind as something that I need to be concerned about.
What would be more dangerous, to find an alien or a ghost?
I feel like more threatening would be a ghost because, if we think about it in like the commonly known sense, they would be, ethereal. They wouldn't be something we could like physically contain.
Is there a higher chance that the ghost is malevolent?
I think so. Yeah. I think that, unless there's just ghosts literally everywhere all the time, there's got to be a reason that this ghost exists here, right? And so I can't think of a reason why it would be here for a good reason versus a bad reason.
There have been stories of benevolent ghosts.
Sure. Yeah, of course. But I feel like they're like heavily outweighed by all the bad stories about ghosts. There's a reason we tell ghost stories to scare people, right?
You're right. I really want ghosts to exist.
You want ghosts to exist?
Yeah, I think it would be interesting. But I also believe that there's a reason for everything in the universe. And I think that if ghosts do exist, they operate and they behave following a set of rules. So there's like a set of rules that dictate their behavior. Like everything. The same is true with aliens. I believe in aliens for the same reason as you. The universe is just way too big. Yeah. I'm not afraid of ghosts, though, because I think fear is the biggest tool that a ghost has against you. I think if you are comfortable with yourself, I'm not saying anybody afraid of ghosts is not comfortable with themselves, but I think if you're comfortable with yourself, and I really enjoy meditation, and so I'm pretty grounded. I know who I am. my own mind doesn't really scare me. So if you were to go into a haunted house and just kind of witness and observe without any judgment the ghost's behavior, I think that might be interesting. Now, I guess the question would come, okay, what if the ghost is throwing a knife at you or throwing like a piece of glass at you?
Right.
What would you do? I don't know. Maybe you can go in with some kind of protection. I think I'm getting a little bit off topic now.
I was gonna say I'm getting very detailed here now. But you want ghosts to exist. Baseline, you want ghosts to exist.
I think it would be interesting if they exist. 'Cause there would have to be some kind of physical law that would allow them to exist.
Sure, right.
Everything has to obey the laws of physics. It would just be a lot for us to unpack and a lot for scientists to study.
Right.
The implications would be huge. It would give credit to a lot of other supernatural stuff.
Right. Good. But just baseline, just quick yes or no. Do you believe that ghosts exist? You want them to exist. Do you believe that they exist?
I don't know.
And what about aliens?
Aliens for sure exist.
Okay.
So to start with aliens,
sure.
Absolutely.
Starting with aliens, yes. Okay.
I would vote. I'm not 100% sure, but
Yeah.
if I had to vote and be like, do aliens exist? Yes or no? I would vote yes.
Okay.
Ghosts. I'll say yes.
Okay.
Yes, because I know people like you. I know people who have had experiences with ghosts.
Sure. Right. Yeah.
And I don't think that they're crazy.
Right.
I don't think they're imagining.
Sure.
I believe them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. I think that's enough for today.
Okay.
I love your questions. You made me think. And see you in the next video. Bye.
Bye.